Hello, my name is Ivan Proto. I'm the president of Alpha CCO. Alpha CCO was founded in 2015 with the main objective of providing registrants in the security industry with a powerful risk management and regulatory compliance software. As you know, the expectations from the regulator are quite clear. Registrants must have a system of control and supervision in place to ensure that their business comply with security legislation. Imagine if one single secure login would allow you to stop relying on manual processes, spreadsheet, and email so that you can keep up with ever-changing regulatory environment. Let's dream even more. Imagine if you were able to generate meaningful and accurate report in a real-time mode for board of director, compliance officer, or regulator without having to go through a complicated and error-prone data gathering process. Alpha CCO is a generic solution that can easily adapt itself to any regulatory requirement. After all, any regulation requires more or less the same type of event reporting, scheduled tasks, recurrent tasks, control monitoring, and alert reporting. Alpha CCO has the configurable tool to manage those into an ultra-secure and encrypted environment, mostly needed these days. You may also be wondering how to generate capacity within your compliance team and how this can be achieved when authorities strengthen their regulatory environment. This is where Alpha CCO comes into play, allowing you to be proactive in allocating your resources on added value tasks where your employee knowledge is essential. We are eager to collaborate with you in the near future to optimize your compliance program. Now, over to Jessica, who will demonstrate some of the many features of our software, Alpha CCO. Enjoy the presentation.
Welcome to Alpha CCO. Since the very beginning, Alpha CCO is the one-of-a-kind tool oriented towards efficiently ensuring the compliance and risk management needs of registered firms. Its features include a user access based on various roles and permissions, a compliance control library based on regulatory requirements applicable to registered firms, which could also be a great foundation to create your organizational controls, a built-in audit trail into each control, an approval process permitting multiple levels of approvals embedded in controls, a flow within the controls feeding the dashboards that allow you to see in the blink of an eye if any control completion and approval is late, or if your action is required with respect to a recurrent control. A configurable reporting tool allowing you to fetch the data provided in each control answer, and a real-time capability for follow-ups as well as corrective actions. We will show you these features in further details, keeping in mind that Alpha CCO is in continuous development to extend its potential as a smart tool. Here's the control library. Its content aims to cover regulatory requirements applicable to registered firms. The controls provided include anti-money laundering, securities-related controls such as registration, KYC, KYP, and suitability, handling of client accounts and complaints, and conflict of interest. It also includes governance, privacy and cybersecurity, as well as anti-spam and other legislation relevant to registered firms. Since Alpha CCO has been designed with the idea to put compliance into practice, the control library has been built seeking for the most appropriate level of control for registered firms. Thus, controls within the library were drafted with emphasis on the documentation of the performance of the control through questionnaires and forms. Nonetheless, it is important to bear in mind that all this is completely adaptive and allows you to create an unlimited amount of controls, which can be modified the way that suits you best. Now, let's take a look at a control. This is the outside business activity control included into the Alpha CCO control library. As you can see, in addition to the description of the instructions applicable to the control, you can attach one relevant document. This is especially practical not only in terms of daily use, but also keeping in mind that having the document related to a certain control gathered at the same place as the control is going to be extremely helpful and save you a great amount of time during an audit. The section called Questions is the place where the compliance questionnaire will be defined. Various types of answers to these questions are configurable within Alpha CCO. You may choose the appropriate one based on the applicable regulatory requirement. As you can see, we have implemented various features for you, such as the creation of requests and tasks. In the outside business activities control, as an example, we have used the task type, which was the most appropriate approach to address its underlying requirements. The questions and answer type can be modified as you wish. Answer type are as various as text field, yes/no answers, pick list, multiple answer choices, number, date, etc. You can even configure date restrictions and add conditional questions based on answers provided to previous questions. Once the control is all set up, you can assign it to each person who must document it. You can also determine the frequency and deadline for documenting the control, which will allow you to keep track of its completion through the dashboard and workflow included in Alpha CCO. Depending on the materiality of the control, you might want to have in place multiple levels of approval. This is also a feature that is included into Alpha CCO. As soon as the approval is received from the first level, the flow of approval will trickle down to the next approver. Here's an example of entering a control. The control completion due date appears on the top left of the page, as well as the instructions previously set up in the control. Here, you would describe the outside business activity and select the start date. If you select that this is a new activity, additional questions relevant to this situation will appear. The mandatory ones identified with an asterisk following the question will have to be filled to be allowed to submit the answers. You may add a general comment at the end of the page, which is shared through all the pages of the control. You can also see on the attachment page defined in the control that you can add multiple documents to support the answer provided. Once the control is completed, you can click on the Submit button. Let's now take a look at your dashboard. The first dashboard on the left provides you with an overview of the controls that are awaiting approval. As a CCO, you can see all controls pending approval, whether it is assigned to your colleagues or yourself. Items identified in gray font are pending actions from your colleagues versus the ones in black are requiring your action. The second dashboard displays all tasks assigned throughout your organization, regardless of their status. The third dashboard, My To-Do List, displays all tasks where your collaboration is required to complete a survey. Finally, the last dashboard displays all requests that you have initiated. Let's go back to the awaiting approval dashboard to take a look at the approval process itself. Once submitted, the control goes through an approval flow in which the assigned approbator can take action and approve or send back the task with a comment to the assigned user. The reassign approver function is useful if you wish to delegate your approval authority on an ad hoc basis. All this is not only efficient in terms of communication, but above anything, it allows you to keep track of the entire compliance process and to ensure that each compliance control is duly completed in the most efficient and integrated manner. Last but not least, Alpha CCO features the corrective action component. As controls are intended to determine whether or not your firm complies, in practice, with applicable requirements, it may happen that the performance of a control results in the identification of a gap and the implementation of an action plan. This feature allows you to keep track of this corrective action from its identification to the final approval of its implementation. With the Alpha CCO software, our goal is to offer you a tool to take back control of compliance. Alpha CCO is your compliance solution.
Okay, firstly, apologies again, guys, for a bit of a rough start, but how appropriate is it that we have technical issues on a panel when we're trying to talk to you about technology solutions? So I think we couldn't have planned it better. Actually, we could have, but that couldn't have avoided these issues. Very similar in a Zoom call would work or a Teams meeting. Technical issues happen. So thank you so much for sticking it out with us and not abandoning this virtual vendor showcase. So let's get started. I know our timeline has shortened, so we will be sticking to our brief Q&A period. I would like to now invite Ivan Proto, who is our CEO of Alpha CCO, to join us and address any questions you may have. Please utilize the Q&A functionality and put in your questions. Welcome, Ivan.
Hello, I'm welcoming any question, guys.
Perfect. Ivan, so as we get things started and people are warming up their fingers to put in their questions, I would like to get things started. So thank you for using this example, because having led an enterprise compliance team where all the administrative and compliance activities fall within a group, outside business activities was something that my team was responsible for. And it was a highly administrative process that when we initially took on, it was Word documents that we would then track, eventually went over to a SharePoint solution. And then we started looking at smart forms. So it's great that Alpha CCO has that functionality to house that end-to-end life cycle of an outside business activities form. But from what I see in the demo and what Jessica demonstrated, it appears that Alpha CCO can be adapted to any requirement, not just a regulatory or risk requirement, but also potentially any internal policy requirement. Can you elaborate maybe a little bit about who is the target user? Is it just the chief compliance officers or the compliance departments, or who do you envision as the user for Alpha CCO?
In the financial market, we're definitely aiming at the CCO and the compliance officer. But to answer your question, does our software could help other than the financial business? Definitely, because our software is a series of tools that you can schedule for whatever purposes. You're in perfect, the customer is perfect control of what's created. I'll give you a few examples that are not in financial service. We have one customer that is using our tool to do a survey on cybersecurity, from a central point. Then they send survey to various suppliers to see what are you doing for anti-spam, that, and based on the answer, then they assess the risk. They say to a company, when you're dealing with that vendor, you have security issue because of that. So they use our tool to identify the various issues they may have on cybersecurity. This is one example. Another example, it's a fairly large company that signed a big contract with the larger company, and they have 1 year to meet all the requirements of the larger company, such as does the financial statement are IFRS compliant. So there's many things that has to be done to meet that requirement. So to ensure that they keep their contract, they are now putting in place a whole series of control with us to ensure that everything that is required by their large customer, they're going to meet at the end of the year. Another example is we have a company that want to become SOC 2 compliant. SOC 2 compliant has its whole series of regulation and things that need to be done. Again, for them, we build with them specific control to making sure that they could at any time provide the evidence that they are meeting the SOC 2 requirement. So our tool is extremely generic. For sure, when you are in a financial market, our tool become with a library of predefined control. So that speed up the process, but the company can create his own control for his own purposes. It could even be used for change management. Let's say that in the company, you have a fairly big change in the role and responsibility of people. And in the period of change, you want to speed up the change and speed up the acceptance of the new way of working. Again, our tool could With control, you could monitor who's doing, who's not doing, who's late, who's adopting the new way and who's not, just to get a clear picture how your change is progressing. So the tool is quite generic. You don't need any programmer. It's all configurable. It's sit in the cloud in an hyper secure environment where there's disaster recovery and everything. It's a peace of mind system, if you will. You don't need you don't need an IT department. You don't need permission. It's all based on what you configure. So
thank you. I think we could all use a little peace of mind in our current environment. So thank you for that. We do have a question from the audience. So speaking to the examples you just talked about, Yvan, right? Whether we're talking about cybersecurity controls or we're talking about IFRS and accounting standards, how do we take, from a change management perspective, how do we take the requirements and map the controls back to the financial institution's inherent risks? What does that look like?
But you're talking specifically in the financial environment?
Yes, the user has asked specifically.
Okay, then what we do, we usually take the what we call the PPM of the company. You know, each of those they must write the policy, procedure, method, or they call it, and they have to produce that document to be registered. So we take their document. We look into it, all the things that they have to do, look in our library of control, those that are built to meet the requirement of his PPM, and activate them in assigning the people of that organization the frequency they need. And for the stuff that they may have that we don't have in the library, then with them we'll build specific control to meet their requirement. So we start from their PPM document and go from there.
Excellent. So it sounds like Alpha CCO is not a very, I won't say there's no one particular focus. It seems like it can address broader compliance and risk and controls needs, which is great. So I'm going to stick to our time limit. So I'm going to cut our Q&A now just so we can get the other vendor showcases in. And if we have time at the end for additional questions, then we'll open up the floor again. So thank you so much, Yvan, and for your presentation, as well as for answering our questions. We will now move on to our next vendor showcase, which is from compliance.ai.
Hello and welcome. Today, I'd like to give you a quick run through of Compliance AI and how we support the compliance, risk, and legal teams of banking, financial services, and insurance companies. Compliance AI is a regulatory technology firm with a modern regulatory change management platform and process. Based on conversations with hundreds of chief compliance officers, we've seen a consistent pattern of compliance officers and legal knowledge workers having to chase documents manually by visiting agency websites one by one to discover new publications and regulations, spending on average a quarter of their day simply aggregating regulatory documents. On top of that comes determining applicability and assigning tasks manually through spreadsheets and then routing documents to the appropriate stakeholders. This is where Compliance AI comes in. We looked at what areas within regulatory change management are ripe for innovation and have automated processes that make regulatory change management simpler. Of course, all of that comes with comprehensive coverage of agencies at a federal and regional level around the globe. Even better, if you don't find an agency you track, you can rest assured that our list of sources is constantly growing. One of our core strengths is adding new regulatory agencies to the platform at no cost to our clients at a very rapid pace. Currently, we're adding dozens of new agencies to the platform every month based on client feedback. The first thing that our clients and chief compliance officers notice about our platform is the ability to filter noise and reduce the chatter coming from agencies and documents that they simply don't care about. Compliance AI has developed one of the most robust search capabilities, allowing you to filter and receive a truly laser-focused set of content. Today, we'll review Compliance AI through the lens of a financial services firm operating in the US and Canada. To ensure we hone in on the most relevant agencies from day one, we'll start with Compliance AI's business profiling onboarding experience and find our firm. Validate our geographies and review our products and services. Now, we simply finish the process to receive a customized set of default filters. These predefined filters provide you with a customized dashboard experience that allows you to hone in on documents, approaching deadlines, and enforcement action trends for the agencies you care about most. You can even scan by topic, key regulations, or even focus on specific concepts of concern. When you need to conduct research, our comprehensive yet straightforward search capabilities are ideal to help you filter out the noise. Let's say you're interested in documents published by the FDIC related to securities. As you see, we've pre-populated these filters for you. You can further refine your search using any of our available filters. For example, we can search exclusively for rules. With just a few clicks, you've found a targeted set of documents. Now that we've found the documents we need, Compliance AI can help you analyze the impact. In near real time, using our expert-in-the-loop machine learning technology, Compliance AI is able to extract critical information, including key dates, CFRs referenced, docket ID, and even topics, so that you can quickly determine applicability. If you're already familiar with a previous version of the rule, use changes to review revisions. Compliance AI recognizes that there are multiple documents within the same docket and allows you to review the history of changes. Most importantly, you're able to collapse these two versions together and see word by word what was added in green and removed in red, all the way down to a single comma being added or removed. You can identify what changes have been made. Once you're ready to complete a more thorough review, our obligation extraction capability provides a great baseline for analysis. In near real time, Compliance AI automatically extracts and isolates obligations within the document so that you can quickly review and determine relevance to your organization. In a moment, I'll show you how you can leverage this capability within your workflow process. Our annotations tool is particularly helpful for anyone on your compliance, risk, or legal team who needs to add guidance on risk, or applicability of policies and procedures. You can use it to add tags at the document level and even at the fragment of the document level. You can even search by your tags, which are unique to your organization later. Of course, You don't have to work alone through these processes. Our automated workflow, task assignment, and collaboration capabilities allow you to work within and across teams. Once you've determined your key searches, you can establish alerts and attach them to customized workflows so that your team is automatically informed about new documents that need to be assessed. In this case, our team members have been automatically assigned to determine whether the document is relevant, determine risk, complete an obligation review, and finally, update policies if necessary. Since every action in the system is being time-stamped, including when tasks were assigned, who completed them and when, what their responses were, and if there were any changes, you can generate the reports you need for internal and external audits come exam time. Compliance AI also provides the capability for you to download your workflow reports in the form of an Excel file with an X.509 certificate as proof to the examiner that the file has not been altered. The combination of these capabilities results in full transparency within your organization, bringing everyone onto the same page, whether it's reporting, providing insight into your activities across subsidiaries, workflows that help bring multiple teams within your organization into alignment, or the common filters providing a standardized view across your lines of business. Compliance AI ensures that everyone stays informed, knowing who needs to do what and when, what documents need to be tackled, and where the gaps are. These are the areas where Compliance AI provides automation to remove the burden off the shoulders of compliance officers, risk officers, and legal professionals at banking, financial services, and insurance firms of all sizes worldwide. To learn more about how to integrate RegTech into your organization, visit Compliance AI and request a demo today.
Okay, and now I would like to request Keyvan Ali-Khani, CEO and co-founder of Compliance.ai, to join us for your questions. And again, Keyvan, I'll get things started. So it's a pretty cool tool. I love the demo. So my question to you is, if I'm the chief compliance officer of a newly regulated institution, can I come to Compliance AI and say, these are my operations, these are the jurisdictions within which I operate. Now, can you tell me what are the requirements, regulations that I must comply with?
That's exactly the approach that we're taking with what we call business profiling. Give us one answer, and that will be the name of your organization. And we should be able to, as a regulated organization with public profiles that tell us your charter, tell us where you operate, your lines of business. We'll have a pretty good stab at it initially. And as you saw in Ruth's demo, you can then adjust that and say, no, I also operate in this place. I'm offering a new product. That's one angle, but then from there, hone in on what is it that you should be paying attention to in the form of concepts, topics, regulatory changes, and what ensues from there in the form of enforcement actions. And of course, as the company grows from fintech to a bank and from a securities firm to expanding to various jurisdictions and et cetera, the product then lends itself to saying, I also now operate in this jurisdiction. I'm also now interested in this line of business or this product or service. And of course, with large organizations, the idea would be to fork it out so that different groups that deal with privacy, cybersecurity, AML, BSA, cryptocurrency, and ICOs, they can have completely separate lines of workflow and views to really reduce the noise, reduce the chatter, so that you're just focusing on what's important to you in your line of business.
So I'm sure folks are thinking this, so I will ask this question. Given that our audience is primarily in the Canadian, whether banking, fintechs, or insurance companies or credit union space today, are there any scope limitations in terms of coverage or types of regulators or regulations compliance.ai covers?
We started with companies headquartered in the United States and then Canada, and now Europe and Southeast Asia is a company. Obviously, we're going gradually into coverage. At this point, we have over, I think, 1,200 regulatory sources across 200 document types and over 3 million regulatory documents and counting. And unfortunately, I cannot claim that we have 100% global coverage, but we've started with US, Canada, EU, UK specifically, and then growing to G20 countries, which has happened for the most part already, and we're growing beyond that. And then as we're engaging with clients, we're really in listen mode about what priority they have in terms of expanded coverage that they'd like to see. It's one thing to say you have coverage for all rules and regulations, but the nuance that we found over the past 4 or 5 years is really that there are specific types of and subtypes of documents that organizations follow that they need to be aware of that are not necessarily falling into the final formation of the rule. It's also proposed rules, notices, registered notices, SR letters, and that 200 different document types that make the regulatory change management process robust. And so now you can have that full visibility, including, for example, comments that are left during the rulemaking processes of interest for some of our users. And then what happens after that? Who was fined? What were the violations and what were the penalties? So from that perspective, you end up having different views for different users in the organization, and coverage for us has been a point of strength that we've on an ongoing basis been able to fulfill the requirements of our users at what we see to be an unprecedented rate in terms of how we're keeping up with the pace of regulatory change.
So speaking with keeping up with the pace of regulatory change, one of our attendees has asked, what is the frequency of the updates to the regulations and the libraries?
Absolutely. We are updating the changes on a near real-time basis. So within 4 hours of the publication of regulatory changes by the source, we not only capture the change, but also rate, rank, summarize, extract, and enhance, as you saw in that presentation, and surface it through 2 different means to our users. One is through the web-based interface that requires no installation or upkeep, and secondly, through our API, so that it could be integrated in, the solutions companies have invested in the form of governance, risk, and compliance solutions. I didn't use the GRC acronym because didn't want to confuse them with your company. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, feel free. It's all good. All publicity is good publicity.
There you go. Yeah.
But thank you, Keyvan, very much. And unfortunately, I have to cut this
no
short.
problem. Yep, absolutely.
So thanks so much. And now we move on to our last, but certainly not the least, demo, which is from Cube.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to tune in today. A huge thank you to the CRTA for setting up today's sessions. I'm Mithra, Senior Business Manager for Cube in Canada, and later I'll be joined by Rob Fulcher, Cube's Head of Business Development in the Americas. Today I'll walk you through how Cube helps our clients solve numerous regulatory change management challenges, converting traditional regulatory content into meaningful regulatory intelligence. To begin, I'd like to give a brief introduction to Cube. Cube was founded in 2011 in response to significant demand for regulatory intelligence and the need for more structured regulatory data. Cube has 10 years of research and development that has been focused on applying the new technology to evolve and enhance our solutions. Our team is constantly growing, and the majority of our staff are engineers who work with our clients to add functionality that adds the most value. Before diving into the specific challenges our clients are solving for, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the Cube solution. Cube is comprised of 3 core elements. First, Cube's regulatory data lake. Second, our unique client environments. And third, Cube's RegConnect data feed, or API, to power our clients' internal systems. Cube's regulatory data lake serves as the backbone for our clients' regulatory data needs. This is where the magic happens. Content is automatically ingested, structured, and constantly monitored for change. Next, Our client environments consist of our core and functional modules, our regulatory ontology and data classification module, our Reg Book module for regulatory inventories and updates, and the Reg Insight module built specifically for horizon scanning. These are supported by further functional models to support collaboration and analytics. Finally, our bidirectional API can be utilized to seamlessly connect to our clients' GRC systems. With over 10 years of experience working with financial institutions, there are always unique regulatory challenges that each of them face, and different ways regulatory intelligence can help to solve them. The most common challenges we see on a consistent basis, regardless of the size and scale of the financial institution, include coverage, be it geographic, regional, or organizational, data flexibility, the metadata, text, granularity, user control, and how the data is structured, automation, eliminating manual gathering, applicability, triage, mapping, and distribution activities, and updates, both reactive updates and proactive horizon scanning. Let's look at coverage first. One of the most prominent challenges firms encounter is finding a single source of regulatory data to overcome multiple entry points and eliminate manual entries. This is often caused by the breadth of requirements they need to consider to ensure they are in compliance across all operations, be it banking, insurance, markets, wealth, risk, HR, IT, cyber, I can go on. The depth of the inventory is also a key concern, as expectations within the firm can differ from country to country or region to region regarding the treatment of federal, provincial, state, or municipal requirements. CUBE is committed to serving as that single trusted source for all financial institution regulatory data. We currently capture and monitor data from 180 countries, over 3,000 regulatory bodies, with comprehensive coverage for all elements of our clients' businesses, be it the core operations or enterprise areas. We also automatically translate all non-English content from over 60 languages, applying rigorous quality assurance. Next, let's look at flexibility. The flexibility and utility of the regulatory data is critical to ensuring it can be appropriately aligned to the business, clearly indicate accountabilities, and easily flow into the firm's GRC solution or any other internal systems for further interaction. Our clients typically require full text of all regulatory data that is completely deconstructed into a standardized format. CUBE also enables clients to operate at any degree of granularity required to pinpoint the obligations that apply to their specific business lines and accountabilities. We also enable staff to create unique extracts of any data within the user interface to further highlight detailed expectations. By applying a universal structure and underlying unique identifiers, we ensure that all data can easily integrate into GRC solutions via API, file load, or the client's preferred method. Let's move on to automation. Our clients and most financial institutions spend a considerable amount of time and budget on mapping exercises to align requirements to their organization. CUBE has built and continues to evolve a unique financial services ontology to automatically classify all regulatory data by industry concepts, themes, products, and customers. The classification is done at the lowest degrees of granularity, allowing for specific obligations to be classified and aligned or assigned automatically. We utilize our regulatory ontology to generate client-specific profiles, which automate inventory creation, alert distribution, workflows, and more significantly, all other mapping exercises our clients require, such as mapping to business units, products, risks, entities, controls, policies, and so on. Automated classification and mapping allow for a far greater degree of connectivity to a GRC, as all objects within the GRC can be completely aligned to the regulatory data using a bidirectional flow. Let's shift to updates. CUBE is dedicated to automating all regulatory updates to allow for complete assurance that all regulatory data in our clients' inventories and connected systems is 100% current and all changes are easily identified. The ability to quickly identify the changes has been an ongoing challenge for all involved in regulatory compliance. We completely redline all content from version to version, clearly indicating what has changed or been added or removed. While that covers the current regulations, perhaps the most long-standing pain point related to regulatory change management has been the proactive element, or horizon scanning, and more specifically, how to eliminate the dreaded noise. Cube takes great pride in our ability to utilize artificial intelligence, machine learning to hone the user experience and results based on the client's specific profiles and the user's interaction with the system. This eliminates the noise for our users and enables a more streamlined data flow into a GRC system for further action. Let's move on to integration. Integration with GRC solutions is often a prominent requirement for many of our clients. We believe these clients have the greatest experience and see the most value when they use the regulatory intelligence in conjunction with their GRC, the old right tool for the right job adage. Cube solutions to the key challenges we've discussed provide an ideal setting to optimize the data currently in your GRC and to automate the process for new data to flow in and trigger further action. Using Cube's Reg Connect API, our customers can automate regulatory inventories, integrate Cube's classifications and mappings, embed horizon scanning into their user processes, incorporate specific analytics and reports, and finally, integrate a federated security system to update user account details. With Cube's data, suite of functionality, and integration capabilities, our customers can solve for the most common and complex regulatory change management challenges. On behalf of everyone at Cube, thank you for tuning in and don't hesitate to reach out. We look forward to answering any questions.
Thanks, Nick. And now I'd like to welcome Rob Fulcher, Head of Sales Americas, and Nick Bray, Senior Business Lead, to answer any questions. While folks are typing, I also wanted to give a shout out as to apologies for what happened. We will be following up with all attendees following this event. We'll actually send out an email. Not everybody got to ask the questions they potentially wanted to do so we will give you an opportunity. If you have to drop off right at the hour or you didn't get your question in, because I do see some from the previous session, we will circle back with our panelists and we'll connect you and get you the answers you're looking for. So Rob and Nick, welcome. And I will kick off again in terms of the I think Nick, you mentioned it's a bi-directional functionality, right? So talking to a GRC tool going forward, but then also having information flowing back. Can either you or Rob tell us a little bit about what that looks like and what that looks like in practice and when that would be used?
Definitely. I mean, the primary use case there is to focus on the automation and how we're aligning the Cube system to the client's ecosystem and infrastructure. So as I mentioned in the video, one of the most common requests we get from clients is to be able to automate much of the process and to be able to perform all the mapping exercises using the technology as opposed to the traditional sort of spreadsheet method from that standpoint. So by profiling the client and all of the products, features, functionality that they need from that standpoint, in addition to all of the risks and ratings and their entire system, we're able to automate all that mapping within the solution. And then depending on the client's preferences, they've got the ability to perform different workflow activities within Cube that could then flow through into their GRC or any other downstream solution, or have those trigger points flow through into the GRC so that the data is flowing back and forth. And whichever system wants to serve as the book of record or needs to serve as the book of record can have the most live and up-to-date information based on those interactions.
Got it. Thank you. So similar to the question that was asked in the previous session, are there any scope limitations potentially? And then also what's the frequency of the updates?
No scope issues at all. We pride ourselves in the breadth and depth of our coverage, primarily driven a lot by our clientele. The global coverage that we have is really paramount to our ongoing operations, and our coverage in North America is top notch from that standpoint. Frequency is as real time as possible in the regulatory environment. So as quickly as the issuing bodies can get the content out, we're going to make sure that it's live for our clients to utilize.
Okay, Thank you. And Rob, I know you're joining from being on vacation, whatever vacation looks like in our current environment. Anything you wanted to add? I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Dina. We're just picking up actually on what a fellow panelist mentioned, Kaivan. So where we've obviously concentrated on the breadth of coverage, Kaivan had mentioned about the depth. And I think that's a real indication of where we are as compliance as a whole, regulatory professionals as a whole. If you go back 10 years or so, people were tracking rule updates and changes. And now it's the earliest possible forewarning that us as vendors can provide that our customers are seeking. So all that proposed and pending, those early regulatory announcements so that compliance can prepare for change ahead of effective and enacted changes coming through. So that's something that we've concentrated on as well, not just the breadth, but that very kind of deep level, full life cycle of reg change as well.
That's great. It's always easier to be proactive, right, rather than reactive. So that's great. I'm getting the signal, folks, to wrap things up. We are at our full hour mark. I wanted to thank, firstly, all our panelists for joining us today and sharing their RCM solutions with our CRTA community. Most of all, and especially, I wanted to thank all of you for your patience today, for carving out this hour and joining us for this meaningful dialogue. Hopefully you found this session to be useful. I also wanted to thank Donna Bales, who's been a trooper behind the scenes. We had a bumpy start, but we got going. So thanks, Donna, for your support. Just look out in further email communication from us. Any questions that you may have for our panelists that went unaddressed, we'll take care of that following this session. Also, our goal at CRTA is try to organize more events like this where we can bring industry professionals like yourselves and join them with our technology providers like our panelists today on different topics that are highly relevant in the Canadian RegTech space. So please tune in. We have another visual vendor showcase scheduled for June 9th on the topic of financial crime. And in the meantime, given that everybody's home and trying to get some time outdoors, staying active, if you're looking to expand your podcast collection, please tune into our RegTech Roundup channel, which is available on your favorite podcast app. Further details for the podcast channel, as well as any upcoming events, is available on our website. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Once again, it was a pleasure being your host. And most of all, I appreciate you sticking it till the end. Thanks for your support today and have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.